The queen sat on her throne, the metal cool beneath her fingertips, her eyes narrowing over the grand hall where the latest delegation awaited their turn. Another one. She sighed, a sound so soft it barely disturbed the polished floors. Next, she commanded, her voice steady but carrying that unmistakable edge of, I'm about to crush your hopes, so brace yourself. The ambassador shuffled forward, a nervous blur of blaster-etched armor and diplomatic insignia. Your Majesty, he began, voice trembling as if his vocal cords anticipated rejection like it was a galactic epidemic. Our worlds could unite under your leadership. Together, we could... She cut him off with a smile so sharp it could have been forged in a star's core. Unfortunately, I'm allergic to alliances that come with too many strings. A faint chuckle rippled from the council members, the kind of laughter that's equal parts relief and shared misery. The ambassador's face went a shade paler, if that was even possible under all the bioenhancements. He nodded, retreating with the grace of someone who'd just tripped over the throne steps in full ceremonial gear. The queen's long ears twitched, almost imperceptibly, but enough to draw a sidelong glance from one of the guards, who quickly pretended to inspect his plasma rifle. Those ears were the subject of endless gossip, of course. Alien Royal, the tabloids called her, the mysterious beauty with the lethal glare and extra hearing. She often joked in her mind that if anyone tried to serenade her, those ears would pick up every off-key note. And trust her, she would not hesitate to retaliate with a laser blast. Power in the galaxy was often measured in fleets and firepower, but the queen preferred the power of disinterest, wielded like a finely sharpened blade. Suitors came in droves, each more desperate than the last, but she had perfected the art of rejection. It was almost a sport. Would you like a starship? No. How about a moon? Still no. Would you like to meet my pet asteroid? She reserved the right to laugh then, and it was a dry, mocking sound that made even the bravest squirm. The queen did not suffer fools or bad gifts. Meanwhile, in a small, cluttered corner of the galaxy, a human man named Elliot was busy causing a minor stir by failing spectacularly at a holographic etiquette simulation. No, 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 you don't bow like that. You look like a malfunctioning toaster, his trainer scolded, flicking her wrist to reset the program. Elliot sighed and tried again, this time accidentally knocking over a virtual vase, which shattered with a surprisingly realistic ping. Great. First impression, klutz. Second impression, accidental vandal. He muttered, rubbing the back of his neck as the simulation glitched and reset once more. To everyone else, he was an unlikely candidate for royal attention. A man from Earth, with no noble lineage, no fleet, and no fancy tech beyond his trusty old datapad. But Elliot had something that others lacked: persistence, curiosity, and an almost absurd sense of humor that he wielded like a shield. He knew the queen's reputation and wasn't daunted. Instead, he was fascinated. He wanted to understand what made her tick, beyond the cold veneer and sharp ears. When Elliot's mission to reach the queen finally got greenlit by his own skeptical commanders, mostly because they wanted to get rid of him, the galaxy watched with a mix of amusement and disbelief. You think he'll make it past the throne room without getting vaporized? One general asked. Well, if nothing else, he might make her laugh, another replied, smirking. Elliot arrived with no grand fanfare, no massive starship or armada, just a worn leather jacket, an open mind, and a knack for accidentally tripping over alien customs. At his first meeting, he greeted the queen with a clumsy bow that nearly turned into a faceplant. The queen raised an eyebrow, her long ears twitching with curiosity, or maybe amusement. You're persistent, she said, or just terribly unlucky. Elliot grinned, scratching the back of his head. Maybe a bit of both, but hey, it's a start, right? The queen allowed a small smile, the first crack in her formidable armor. I suppose I could tolerate a few more disasters like this. The court erupted into whispers. Perhaps, just perhaps, something new was beginning. Days turned into weeks, and Elliot's awkward charm began to chip away at the queen's solitude. He asked questions no one else dared, laughed at jokes even he didn't understand, and somehow managed to listen more than he spoke. At a state dinner, When a dignitary launched into a pompous speech about interstellar trade, Elliot quietly passed the Queen a datapad with a meme of a dancing robot labeled, "When they drone on for hours, but you've got a galactic conquest tomorrow." The Queen's silent laughter was a revelation. "You have a strange sense of timing," she whispered. Elliot shrugged. "Well, if ruling a galaxy doesn't work out, I've got a future in comedy." The Queen glanced at her advisors, who tried and failed to hide their smiles. For the first time, the Iron Queen felt the warmth of companionship, wrapped in humor and the absurdity of it all. Yet the galaxy was not so easily fooled. Rumors began to swirl that the Queen was weakening, that her iron grip might slip. Spies watched Elliot with suspicion, diplomats reconsidered their positions, and fleets prepared for any sign of vulnerability. But the Queen remained steady, knowing that sometimes the greatest strength lay not in power or fear, but in trust. Trust that could be built on the laughter shared between a queen and the most unlikely of human suitors. And in that quiet, improbable connection, the galaxy's most powerful ruler found a flicker of something she had long denied herself: hope. The Queen didn't exactly invite Elliot into the inner sanctum on purpose. It was more like she noticed that he was still there, asking odd questions and making inappropriate jokes about the star charts. "You know," he said one day, gesturing at the swirling data display, "if these planets were arranged like my sock drawer, we'd have fewer wars and more lost socks." The Queen raised an eyebrow. "Lost socks?" she asked. "You have those problems too?" Elliot grinned. "Every day. Some mysteries are universal." She sighed but didn't dismiss him, which was practically an invitation in the Queen's book. Over the following weeks, Elliot became a fixture, like a particularly clumsy comet that just wouldn't burn out. Her advisors were less enthusiastic. "Your Majesty, this human's presence undermines protocol," one whispered, casting wary glances. Another muttered about cultural contamination. The Queen, however, waved them off. "If I can't handle a few jokes at my expense, how can I expect to handle a hostile fleet?" she retorted. Elliot's awkward mannerisms and penchant for accidentally knocking over important-looking devices were a constant source of quiet chaos. During a strategy briefing, Elliot tried to demonstrate a new tactic using holograms, but ended up projecting a dancing penguin instead. "That's a strategic feint," he explained earnestly. "The enemy won't expect the disco move." The Queen couldn't help but chuckle. "Only you would think of warfare as a dance-off," she said, shaking her head. Meanwhile, the human's persistence revealed layers of the Queen that few had ever glimpsed. He noticed the tiny mechanical bird that sang a melancholy tune perched by her window, the only thing she seemed to care for besides the galaxy itself. "She's not so different from us," Elliot confided to a fellow envoy. "Behind all that power and those sharp ears is someone who just wants a friend." And that was exactly what Elliot offered. Friendship disguised as awkward banter and curious questions. One evening, the Queen found herself laughing at a story Elliot told about Earth's ridiculous fashion trends, specifically a garment called the man bun. "A hairstyle so controversial it has sparked wars?" she asked. "No," Elliot replied, "but it causes enough eye rolls to be just as dangerous." The Queen smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. The political landscape was shifting too. Rival factions saw Elliot as a weakness to exploit, a human who dared to approach the Queen with nothing but his sincerity. Agents attempted to discredit him, planting false rumors and manipulating court intrigue. Yet Elliot handled each challenge with an unflappable spirit. Once, when accused of spying, he responded, "If I were a spy, I'd at least be better at it. I can't even keep my communicator charged." The Queen admired his resilience, and perhaps, more than that, the way he reminded her that not everything had to be taken with deadly seriousness. After all, in the vastness of space, sometimes all you could do was laugh at the absurdity of it all. One particularly tense day, the Queen faced a rebellion brewing on a distant moon. Her generals urged swift, ruthless action. Elliot, however, proposed an unorthodox plan: dialogue over destruction. "Why not send them a message with a joke?" he suggested. "If they laugh, they listen. If not, well, then we have a backup plan." The Queen found herself intrigued. Against the advice of her war council, she allowed Elliot to send a transmission, an elaborate comedic routine performed by a holographic puppet resembling a notorious rebel leader. The rebels were baffled, then amused, and finally agreed to parley. It was an unexpected victory, proving that sometimes humor could be a weapon as sharp as any laser. Their growing connection stirred something in the Queen that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Trusting someone was a gamble she had never been willing to take, but Elliot's genuine presence made her question the solitary fortress she'd built around herself. One night, after a long day of state affairs, Elliot accidentally spilled a cup of synth coffee onto the Queen's datapad. "I'm sorry," he apologized sheepishly. "I swear I'm not usually this clumsy. Must be the gravity here." The Queen laughed aloud, startling a nearby guard. "You're hopeless," she said fondly, "and somehow that's exactly why I tolerate you." As their laughter echoed softly through the palace halls, the Queen realized that the galaxy's most powerful ruler was beginning to feel something that had eluded her for years: companionship. Word of their odd friendship spread, sparking gossip and disbelief. "The Queen bested by a human's bad jokes?" one senator sneered. "She's lost her mind," another muttered. But Elliot and the Queen paid little heed. They shared quiet moments, discussing everything from ancient cosmic phenomena to the best way to make a terrible joke land. Elliot once tried to explain the concept of dad jokes, and the Queen, after a pause, said, "I may not understand your humor, but I enjoy its persistence." It was an alliance forged not in power or politics, but in the simple, profound act of sharing a laugh. And in the cold vastness of space, that was a rare and precious thing. The Queen found herself in an unusual predicament, not because a rival fleet was amassing at the edge of the Nebulon sector. That was expected. Nor because the Cosmic Tribunal was threatening sanctions for her latest territorial claim. That was routine. No, the problem was Elliot's latest idea for improving the palace's notoriously inefficient security system. "Imagine," he said with a grin, "a network of tiny drones that not only patrol but also tell jokes to distract intruders. We call them the Laughing Sentinels." The Queen stared at him, her long ears twitching. "Jokes? Seriously?" "Absolutely," Elliot said. "Nothing disarms a hostile better than a pun about starships. Trust me." The Queen shook her head, trying to suppress a smile. She'd never admit it, but the thought of armed drones cracking jokes was strangely comforting, especially if it meant less paperwork for her. Weeks before, Elliot had managed to infiltrate the Queen's tightly wound schedule with an audacity no one else dared. He'd brought a small device, a relic from Earth called a karaoke machine, claiming it was the perfect way to boost morale. The Queen was skeptical. Karaoke in the throne room. Next, someone would suggest dance-offs to settle disputes. Elliot's pitch included a demonstration, which involved him singing a rather off-key rendition of an ancient human ballad. The court was horrified. The Queen, however, found herself laughing so hard her regal composure wavered. "If only diplomacy could be resolved with a duet," she joked. Elliot winked. "Trust me, it'd be less messy than most peace talks." From then on, karaoke nights became an unofficial, if somewhat chaotic, tradition, much to the bewilderment of the palace staff. Political intrigue swirled like a dense nebula. Some factions sought to undermine the Queen's reign by targeting Elliot, labeling him a human novelty unfit for royal circles. Secret transmissions circulated, suggesting the Queen was losing her grip on sanity, or worse, falling in love. "Love?" Elliot scoffed when he heard the rumors. "I'm barely keeping up with the etiquette, let alone emotions." The Queen overheard this and quipped, "If you can't love yourself, how can you expect me to?" Elliot's grin was infuriatingly charming. Yet beneath the banter was a growing bond that neither the Queen nor the human fully understood at first. It was a strange mix of camaraderie, challenge, and an almost magnetic pull that defied the cold expanse of space between their worlds. The Queen's long ears, once symbols of aloof power, became a source of humor between them. Elliot, ever the prankster, once secretly attached tiny glowing antennas that twitched in time with her mood. When she discovered them, she couldn't help but laugh. "You're testing my patience," she warned. but her eyes sparkled with amusement. "And I'm passing with flying colors," Elliot replied. Their private moments became an oasis amid galactic politics, a reminder that even the most powerful needed respite. Elliot's human quirks, from his obsession with Earth's outdated memes to his tendency to accidentally activate hidden palace security features, brought unexpected lightness to the Queen's world. One day, during a tense negotiation over mining rights on the volatile planet of Xerion, Elliot's humor saved the day. The opposing delegate, known for his ruthless tactics and suspiciously perfect coiffure, launched into a blistering tirade. Elliot interrupted, holding up a hologram of a dancing robot labeled Xerion's future workforce. The room fell silent. Then unexpectedly, laughter erupted. The tension broke like a supernova. The Queen glanced at Elliot, a rare smile softening her features. "Well played," she murmured. "Sometimes laughter is the best diplomacy." Elliot shrugged, or at least the most entertaining. As the Queen and Elliot's alliance deepened, whispers of change spread across the galaxy. The unyielding ruler who had turned away the galaxy's mightiest was now seen with a human who didn't fit any mold. Their relationship was a paradox, an iron-willed monarch and a clumsy human, bound by laughter and trust. The Queen began to question what it meant to wield power. Was it control, fear, or something else entirely? Elliot's presence challenged her, forcing her to confront vulnerabilities long buried. One evening, as they watched the swirling stars from the palace balcony, Elliot joked, "You know, for someone who rules an entire galaxy, you're surprisingly good at losing at card games." The Queen smiled. "And you're surprisingly persistent for someone with two left feet." They laughed together, the vastness of space feeling a little less lonely. The galaxy's most powerful queen had met her match, not in battle or politics, but in the quiet moments of connection with a human who saw her not as a sovereign, but simply as herself. And in that unexpected alliance, the seeds of a new era were planted, one where strength was measured not just in fleets and firepower, but in trust, humor, and the courage to be vulnerable. The galaxy had a funny way of reminding you that even the most carefully laid plans could go sideways in spectacular fashion. The Queen was in the middle of an important council meeting when Elliot burst in, breathless and grinning like a kid who just discovered a new toy. "You have to see this," he said, waving a small device. "I call it the quantum mood ring. It translates emotions into light patterns." The Queen arched a long ear, clearly unimpressed. "And what, pray tell, is the tactical advantage of a glowing bracelet?" Elliot shrugged. "Distraction? Diplomacy? It's like wearing your feelings on your wrist. Plus, it changes color when you tell a bad joke." The council groaned collectively, but the Queen allowed herself a rare chuckle. "Well, at least it won't help you win any favors," she said. Elliot's latest invention quickly became a staple in their odd partnership. The Queen would catch herself sneaking glances at the shifting colors on her wrist during tense meetings, the bracelet's hues ranging from serene blue to fiery red, depending on her mood. One day, during a heated debate over the allocation of starship resources, the ring flashed bright yellow as Elliot cracked a joke about bureaucrats needing less paperwork and more coffee. The room briefly erupted into laughter before the Queen reminded everyone to stay on task. Elliot whispered, "Hey, I'm just trying to keep things lively." The Queen shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips. "You certainly succeed." Meanwhile, the political undercurrents of the galaxy stirred as alliances shifted like the orbit of unstable moons. The Queen's refusal to bow to traditional suitors and powerful factions frustrated many, but Elliot's presence added an unpredictable variable. Rival leaders attempted to use the human as leverage, hoping to unsettle the Queen's composure. One particularly ambitious diplomat sent a holovid claiming Elliot was a spy sent to destabilize the realm. Elliot responded by sending back a hologram of himself trying to operate a complex alien translator, resulting in a series of comical mispronunciations and a botched attempt at a traditional dance. The Queen watched the vid, laughter bubbling up uncontrollably. "At least he's harmless," she said. Behind the scenes, Elliot's curiosity about the Queen's world only grew. He insisted on touring the palace's less glamorous areas, the sprawling maintenance tunnels, the ancient archives filled with dust-covered relics, and even the forgotten greenhouse where alien flora struggled to survive under artificial light. You'd be amazed what stories these plants could tell if they could talk, he mused, carefully examining a luminous flower that pulsed softly. The queen, following at a respectful distance, found his enthusiasm infectious. You make a convincing gardener, she teased. Just don't ask me to prune anything. Elliot grinned. Deal. I'm better at planting ideas than trimming leaves. Their companionship deepened in unexpected ways. Elliot's straightforward humanity was a balm to the queen's carefully guarded loneliness. One evening, as they shared a meal of synthesized delicacies, Elliot accidentally knocked over a glass, sending a cascade of shimmering liquid across the table. Oops, he said, reaching for napkins. The queen watched, amused. You've brought chaos and laughter into my ordered world, she said softly. Elliot shrugged. I figure if you can't handle a little mess, you're not ready to rule a galaxy. The queen smiled, realizing he might be right. But not all moments were lighthearted. A sudden distress signal from a nearby colony threw the queen and Elliot into immediate action. A mysterious anomaly was destabilizing the planet's core, threatening to tear it apart. The queen convened her council, issuing commands with practiced precision. Elliot, ever the improviser, suggested an unorthodox solution involving nanobots reprogrammed to stabilize the planet's magnetic field. The council was skeptical, but the queen trusted Elliot's instincts. Very well, she said. Prepare your nanobots. As they deployed the microscopic machines, Elliot quipped, I hope they don't get stage fright. The queen rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. As the nanobots worked their way through the planet's crust, stabilizing the core's fluctuations, Elliot and the queen monitored the progress. The tension was palpable, but Elliot's presence kept the mood lighter than expected. If this works, I want a medal, Elliot said. Or at least a lifetime supply of those coffee things you humans love. The queen nodded. I'll consider it. When the crisis finally passed without catastrophic damage, the queen allowed herself a rare moment of relief. You have a knack for turning disasters into stories worth telling, she said. Elliot grinned. Just wait until I write the memoirs. The incident cemented their partnership further. The queen began to see Elliot not just as a peculiar human, but as a vital ally whose unpredictability was a strength rather than a liability. Their conversations grew deeper, touching on philosophy, the nature of power, and the strange, beautiful loneliness of ruling. Elliot once joked, Maybe you need me around just to remind you to laugh. The queen's reply was quiet but genuine. Perhaps I do. In a galaxy ruled by strength and fear, their friendship was a rare constellation of trust and humor, a beacon against the void. And as stars blinked in the endless night, neither queen nor human could deny that something extraordinary was unfolding between them. The queen stood at the edge of her balcony, staring out at the swirling star fields that stretched endlessly before her. Elliot appeared beside her, carrying 2 steaming cups of synth coffee, one of which he offered with a crooked smile. You know, I read somewhere that ruling a galaxy is 90% waiting and 10% panic, he said. The queen snorted softly. Sounds about right. And the remaining 100% is trying not to snap at your human advisor? Elliot chuckled, accepting the cup. Hey, I take pride in my chaos-inducing tendencies. It had been months since the quantum mood ring incident, the karaoke debacles, and the nanobot planet-saving escapade. The galaxy was no less dangerous, but something fundamental had shifted in the queen. She wasn't just the iron-willed sovereign who rejected every suitor with a chilly glare anymore. She was a leader who had learned to embrace unpredictability, humor, and, dare she admit it, trust. Elliot had become not only her confidant, but also her mirror, reflecting vulnerabilities she had long hidden behind her crown. Their latest challenge came in the form of a coalition demanding that the Queen relinquish control over certain key star systems. The ultimatum was clear: concede or face a full-scale rebellion. The council was in uproar, but the Queen had a plan that only Elliot could appreciate. She called the coalition leaders to a summit, not in a grand palace hall, but aboard a repurposed space station orbiting a binary star, chosen for its neutrality and, more importantly, its notoriously unreliable gravity. As the delegates floated awkwardly in zero-G, the Queen's long ears twitched with barely contained amusement. Elliot, meanwhile, was grinning like a cat who just pushed a priceless vase off a shelf. "If diplomacy doesn't work, there's always slapstick," he whispered. The Queen raised an eyebrow. "This had better be good." Elliot produced a small device and activated a series of holographic illusions, turning the summit into a bizarre blend of a space carnival and a diplomatic circus. Delegates found themselves dodging floating pies and navigating a maze of holographic laser beams that spelled out playful insults in ancient galactic dialects. Laughter echoed through the station. The tension that had threatened to ignite war dissolved in the absurdity of the moment. The Queen's voice cut through the mirth with calm authority. "We are all custodians of this galaxy's future. Let us find common ground in respect, and perhaps in laughter." One by one, the coalition leaders nodded, the weight of their grievances lightened by shared humor and an unexpected sense of camaraderie. Back on the throne, the Queen and Elliot reflected on the summit's success. "Who knew diplomacy required pie throwing?" Elliot joked. The Queen smiled, her long ears flicking thoughtfully. "Perhaps power is not about standing alone, but about inviting others to dance. Awkwardly if necessary." Elliot raised his cup. "To awkward dances and unexpected partners." The Queen clinked her cup against his. Their journey had changed them both. The Queen had shed layers of icy detachment, discovering strength in vulnerability and connection. Elliot had found a place where his quirks were not just tolerated, but celebrated. Together they had woven a new narrative for the galaxy, one where trust, humor, and humanity reigned alongside power. As the stars continued their silent vigil, the Queen whispered, "Thank you, Elliot, for breaking through my defenses." Elliot grinned. "And thank you for letting me in. Now about that karaoke championship." The Queen laughed, a sound as rare and precious as a supernova's glow. "You're on." In that shared laughter, amid the endless cosmos, they had found not just alliance, but something far more profound, an unexpected home. The sky was on fire, which wouldn't have been so bad if Elias hadn't been out of water, low on ammo, and wearing a helmet 2 sizes too small thanks to a supply officer with a vendetta. Plasma streaked overhead like drunken lightning, and the scorched soil under his boots hissed with the heat of a half-collapsed star cruiser. Around him, the shattered remains of the 8th Colonial Infantry scattered like spilled parts from a broken toy. Too burned, too quiet, too still. Elias didn't mourn yet. Mourning was for after you stop bleeding. He crept through the twisted wreckage of what used to be someone's high-priced dropship, now nothing more than charred alloy and sharp edges. The display on his wrist pad blinked angrily. Radiation levels unsafe, oxygen dropping, high probability of things exploding. It helpfully suggested he consider relocating to a less lethal environment. He tapped it twice and muttered, "Yeah, thanks, Siri, but horrified." Somewhere behind the smoking horizon, the enemy was regrouping. Technically, they weren't called the enemy. They were the Varelli Syndicate, official trading partners gone very unofficial. Their ships looked like sea creatures with tempers, and their weapons operated on what Elias could only describe as dark energy and bad decisions. Still, they bled like anyone else, and they ran from grenades, which was comfortingly universal. His motion tracker pinged once, then again. Something was moving in the half-ruined corridor of the shuttle ahead. He unslung his rifle, clicked it from stun to let's not get murdered, and edged forward. The air reeked of ozone and melted composites. Every step made a soft crunch. Debris or bones, he didn't look closely. Then he saw her, or rather, he tripped over her. "Ah, hell," he grunted, arms pinwheeling. His rifle clattered. He landed hard on his back and rolled sideways, ready to fire. But nothing moved. The figure sprawled, half-hidden beneath a snapped beam, was small, barely more than a shadow, until the beam shifted and light caught her face. She wasn't human, close but not. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her hair matted with blood and dirt, cascading black across a dented metal floor. And her ears, long, elegantly curved, twitched faintly as she breathed, shallow and weak. Her uniform was torn, bearing no insignia Elias recognized. Though the fabric shimmered faintly with something high-grade, and definitely not regulation. He stared for a moment, confused, then checked for weapons. Nothing obvious. Her fingers were curled tight against her chest. One leg was twisted at a bad angle, and she had the look of someone recently introduced to an explosion. She opened her eyes. They were silver. Not the poetic kind. Literally silver, like molten metal behind a glassy lens. Unfocused and flickering with pain. He raised both hands. "Hey. Hi. Don't vaporize me." She blinked slowly, lips parting. A strange melodic word tumbled out, completely untranslatable. And then she slumped again, unconscious. Elias sat back on his heels. "Okay, good talk." The smart choice would have been to leave. Command was gone. Evac was sketchy at best. And technically, she could have been the enemy. Or worse, a diplomatic incident in the making. But something about the broken way she lay there and the flicker of vulnerability in those inhuman eyes made him hesitate. He tried lifting her gently. She groaned, then promptly passed out again. "You're not light," he muttered, adjusting her across his back. "You're like royal tier dense. What are you made of? Compressed dignity?" The wristpad warned him again. Hostiles approaching. Time to move. He staggered through rubble and ash, his boots slipping on slag. The horizon shivered with incoming fire, but the forward medical post, assuming it was still there, was 3 clicks west. He didn't stop to think about what he was doing. He just moved, carrying the alien girl like a sack of unusually noble potatoes. Twice he ducked into shell craters as drones zipped overhead. Once she stirred and murmured something, voice cracked and soft. He tried talking to her, asking where she came from, who she was, if she could maybe give him a hint before she died in his arms and left him trying to explain her to a very confused Earth ambassador. No reply, just shallow breaths and silence. By the time he reached the remnants of the med tent, his arms were shaking. The field medic, a wiry woman with a perpetual scowl and a tattoo of a cactus giving the finger, raised an eyebrow. "You bring me another alien girlfriend, Rourke?" He dropped to his knees. "She fell for me hard." From orbit, the medic sighed and called for assistance. They placed the girl on a gurney, cutting away burnt fabric and muttering in languages Elias didn't recognize. Machines whirred, scanners buzzed. Someone shouted for a translator corps. Elias stood aside, dazed, still holding one of her gloves in his hand. It was made of something like silk, but stronger than Kevlar. He stared at it, then shoved it in his pocket before anyone could ask questions. When the medic finally turned to him, her face was grim. "She's not from any Alliance member species," she said, "and I'm guessing she's not just a tourist." "Yeah, I got that from the royal posture and near-death aura," Elias muttered. "She needs to rest. And unless you want to be court-martialed for unauthorized retrieval of potential enemy royalty, I suggest you keep your mouth shut." He blinked. "Wait, royalty?" The medic arched an eyebrow. "Didn't you check her sigil, that crest on her belt?" Elias had not. He had been a bit distracted by the explosions. The medic turned away, muttering about grunts and galactic consequences. Elias sat down on a supply crate and let his head drop back with a hollow thunk. The tent lights flickered above him. Somewhere outside, plasma cannons thundered again. He sighed. "Of course, she's royalty. I rescue one alien, and she's got crown-level problems. What's next? She's also psychic and wants to marry me for diplomatic immunity?" From the medbed, a faint groan escaped the alien girl's lips. He pointed at her. "Don't even think about it." The first thing she did upon waking up was incinerate the IV drip. There was a short pop, a sizzle, and then a very confused medical droid skidded backward on its hover pads while trying to recalculate why its patient had just fried 2,000 credits worth of imported biotech with a flick of her fingers. Elias, halfway through a perfectly mediocre protein bar, choked and dropped it. The tent filled with a buzzing silence, followed closely by a string of alien words that sounded to him like someone cursing in operatic rage while underwater. He stood up slowly, palms out. "Hey, it's me. The guy who dragged your unconscious body out of a war zone. Remember? That heartwarming moment?" She stared at him. Her eyes were clearer now, still silver, still unsettling, but sharp. Her expression said several things at once. Where am I? Who are you? And also, I could vaporize you right now and only slightly regret it later. The medical droid hovered closer again. She raised one delicate hand. Okay, let's not kill the help, Elias said quickly. That one actually knows where the spare socks are. She hesitated, then let her hand drop reluctantly. A few sparks danced off her fingertips and died. She tried to sit up, didn't make it. Her muscles trembled, and she let out a frustrated breath, which still managed to sound like it came from someone who usually gave speeches before conquering moons. Elias took a step closer. You've been out for 3 days. Internal injuries, leg fracture, neural shock, and some, what did the doc call it? Royal level exhaustion? You got any idea how hard it is to keep someone unconscious from accidentally killing themselves with their own glowing fingernails? She tilted her head. The translator chip installed by the med team pinged softly, finally locking in on her language matrix. Her voice was lower than he expected. Smooth, careful, commanding. You're a soldier. Technically. Corporal Elias Rourke, Earth Defense Forces, currently not enjoying his deployment. She looked him over, gaze lingering a fraction too long on his poorly repaired chest plate and the tomato soup stain on his right thigh. Your attire is asymmetrical. I call it fashion through adversity. He thought he saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Just once, a micro-expression, as if her face had momentarily considered a smile and then rejected the notion on moral grounds. She stopped. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She seemed to consider, then revised. My name is Avel. I require a secure communications link. Immediately. Elias scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, about that. The only comms we've got left are short range. The uplink satellites are toast. Unless you can beam messages through your earlobes, I don't think we're getting in touch with your, travel agent anytime soon. Her silence pressed into him, not cold but weighing. After a pause, she asked, Where am I? Outpost 17, medbay such as it is. It used to be a munitions tent, but now it's where we keep the people who might explode less violently. She looked around, clearly unimpressed. A glimmer passed over her features. Disdain, maybe grief, but too quickly buried to read. I need transport. My position here endangers your entire camp. You're not exactly in taxi-hailing condition. I do not require a taxi. I require a starship. Elias shrugged. Well, good news. We've got half a shuttle, one fuel cell, and an intern who swears she can navigate using only vibes and a broken compass. So if you're not too picky, Abel closed her eyes briefly. You mock. I joke. It's different. Joking is how humans cope with imminent doom. She opened her eyes. That explains your species' historical volatility. Fair. She tried sitting up again. This time Elias offered a hand. She eyed it like it was a live grenade. I don't bite, he said. That is statistically unlikely. Most Terran combatants possess at least 28 teeth. He raised an eyebrow. You've been reading our dental records? I am thorough. With obvious reluctance, she took his hand. He helped her up slowly, her weight unexpectedly light but tense. Up close, he noticed her skin was threaded with faint lines of bioluminescence, barely visible unless you were looking. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying weakness she clearly hated. He guided her to a chair. She sat stiffly, as though unsure whether furniture could be trusted. The medical droid returned, beeped apologetically, and offered a nutrient pack. Avel sniffed it, recoiled faintly, then downed it in 2 gulps like a prisoner accepting poor rations. So, Elias said, want to tell me who you really are? She glanced at him, then away. No. Okay, great. I'll just assume you're the ambassador of a very angry spa planet. Silence then. You retrieved me from the battlefield. Why? He shrugged again instinctively. You were bleeding. I had arms. That's generally how rescue works. Even for someone not of your species? Well, you looked like you needed help, and I was already going in that direction. Plus, I figured if you turned out to be a homicidal shapeshifter, I'd at least get a good story before you ate my liver. Another twitch at the corner of her mouth. Definitely a smile this time. It lasted half a second, then vanished into her usual imperial scowl. I owe you a debt, she said. No, you don't. Just don't vaporize me, and we'll call it even. I do not forget debts. Elias spread his hands. Look, Avel, if that's your real name, you can owe me a drink. If we both survive this mess, we'll go to a space bar. You can tell me all about your mysterious past, and I'll lie about my high school GPA. She tilted her head again, regarding him with that unnerving, calculating gaze. Very well. One drink. Should we survive? Elias smirked. Great. I'm already looking forward to whatever wildly inedible thing your people call beer. From outside the tent came the distant whine of engines, and then an explosion that rattled the metal poles. Avel straightened, alert. Elias sighed, reaching for his gear. Duty calls, he muttered. Try not to blow up the rest of the equipment while I'm gone. I make no promises. He stopped at the flap and looked back. One more thing, just between us. That sigil on your belt? Pretty sure it belongs to a ruling house from the core systems? Her eyes gave nothing away. Elias grinned. So either you're royalty or you're really into cosplay. He stepped out before she could answer. The third explosion of the morning arrived with all the grace of a sledgehammer dipped in thunder. Elias ducked instinctively, teeth clenched as the ground jumped under his boots. Outside the outpost perimeter, another Varelli artillery round cratered the dusty hillside, sending smoke curling toward the sky like lazy war ghosts. A shard of metal whistled past his ear and embedded itself into the snack dispenser beside him, which beeped twice in confusion before catching fire. The last protein bar incinerated with a mournful crackle. Great, Elias muttered. Now the vending machine's down. That was our only source of morale. The tactical display on his wrist pad pulsed red over and over, and despite the chaos, he kept one eye on it. Most of their defensive systems had been fried in last night's skirmish. The automated turrets were stuck in diagnostic loops, and one of the drones had begun quoting Shakespeare whenever it locked onto a target. Something wicked this way comes, it intoned helpfully, firing at a passing cloud. Shut up, Juliet, Elias growled. The perimeter guards were holding for now. Barely. He passed Corporal Zane, who had duct-taped two rifles together and declared it experimental warfare. No one had the heart to argue. Around them, the remaining human soldiers shuffled between cover and shouted at malfunctioning tech, all while dodging incoming plasma that really didn't care about their morale reports. Back inside the med tent, Avel was up and moving, awkwardly, stiffly, and with the exact expression of someone who had never needed help in her entire life and was insulted by the suggestion. She was now wearing a makeshift uniform stitched together from human fatigues and whatever shimmering material had survived her own armor. The result was part queen, part scavenger, and entirely alarming. You shouldn't be standing, Elias said as he entered. I shouldn't be stranded on a primitive world either, she replied flatly. Yet we both endure. He held up a datapad. Congrats, your scans came back. Good news. You're not radioactive. Bad news. Your immune system thinks chicken soup is a biohazard. She ignored the joke. There is movement on the ridge. Enemy vessels preparing descent. Elias blinked. You've got tactical vision? She tapped the side of her head. Implanted augmetics. I see at a greater range than you. Also through walls. Also, she paused, turning toward the tent divider. Private Kelso is hiding in the storage crate with contraband sweets. A guilty whimper issued from the crate. Elias sighed. Damn it, Kelso. Not the marshmallow rations again. Abel crossed her arms. Your soldiers are ill-prepared for what approaches. The Varelli do not conduct skirmishes this long without a second wave. They are buying time, summoning reinforcements. Elias didn't argue, mostly because that was the exact conclusion he'd reached 2 hours ago after watching a Varelli hovercraft circle their outpost like a cat deciding how to eat a trapped mouse. So what are we talking? He asked. Full planetary siege? Bombardment from orbit? Light tea and polite surrender? Avel's eyes narrowed. They want me. If they suspect I survived, they will not risk orbital fire. They will come personally. You sure think highly of yourself. I am the first sovereign of the Valeri continuum. My presence is of strategic and symbolic consequence. My capture could shift the power balance across 6 sectors. Elias blinked. Okay, so like, a little highly of yourself. She stepped forward, steady despite her limp. I must leave this outpost. Immediately. Before my presence brings your people to ruin. That's very noble and very stupid, Elias replied. We don't exactly have an escape ship lying around, unless you count the emergency glider, which only works if your goal is to crash very stylishly into the side of a mountain. Avel tilted her head. What about the fold diver? He stared at her. The what now? I saw the schematics in your engineer's terminal. You are constructing a localized slipstream vessel. Elias rubbed his eyes. That's not a vessel. That's a death wish with a warp coil. It's a prototype designed by an intern who believes quantum mechanics are a suggestion. It can fly. It can explode. It must fly. You have very selective hearing. She didn't respond. Instead, she moved past him with sudden speed, her stride faster now, more determined. Elias followed, grumbling, as she made her way through the tent flap and out toward the rear storage hangar. Inside, the fold diver waited, or more accurately, sulked. It was half-built, mostly jury-rigged from scavenged parts, and shaped like an upside-down spoon. Cables spilled out of its open hull like spaghetti made of regret. The drive core blinked with a single blue light, which Elias had always taken as a sign of quiet panic. Oval walked around it once, twice, then stopped. We will finish it. We? You saved me. I owe you. I will not allow your people to be slaughtered because of me. I will leave. They will follow. You will survive. Elias folded his arms. I'm flattered. But what makes you think I'm not coming with you? She stared at him. He stared back. You're serious? She asked, as if someone had just suggested they fight a sun with a flashlight. You want me to stay here and wait to get vaporized while you joyride through enemy territory in an unstable warp spoon? No thanks. I'm not accustomed to companions. I'm not accustomed to flying death traps. Looks like we're both expanding our comfort zones. A beat passed. Then softly she said, You are brave. Foolish, but brave. Most people just go with pain in the ass. Outside, the ground rumbled again. Another explosion. A dull roar in the distance. The first wave had ended. Something worse was coming. Elias slapped the hull of the fold diver. Let's fix this flying disaster. You handle the scary math. I'll handle the parts that explode. Avel raised one brow. That's a questionable division of labor. I've seen your medical chart. You literally fried an IV drip by sneezing. I think you'll be fine. She said nothing for a long moment, then stepped inside the open hatch. Very well, but if you slow me down, I will leave you behind. If you fly off without me, I'll just hitch a ride with Juliet. The drone's been dying to try spaceflight. The machine drifted nearby, lights flickering. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. Elias grinned. He's got spirit. The fold diver hissed like it was offended by being touched, which, to be fair, might have been accurate. Elias wiped grease from his fingers and eyed the open console. Wires like startled noodles dangled in every direction, and the nav screen displayed exactly one word. No. The startup sequence had been rejected again, probably because the onboard AI had a strong sense of self-preservation. Avel stood beside him, unblinking, holding a translucent power cell like she was judging the decisions of an entire species. Your engineering protocols are interpretive. It's not a performance art piece, Elias muttered. That's just what happens when you build a slipstream drive out of spare toasters and the coolant core from a broken ice cream drone. She crouched by the primary junction panel. This connector is inverted. I know. You labeled it definitely not the problem. I was being optimistic. She rewired it with precise, sharp movements, hands flickering with subtle energy. The air around her shimmered faintly, like heat or authority. She wasn't glowing, not quite, but Elias got the sense that if she wanted to, she could. She paused mid-task and said without looking up, Drone approaching. 30 seconds. No heat signature. Likely recon class. Elias glanced toward the open hangar bay door, eyes narrowing. Friend or foe? Does it matter? He sighed and pulled his rifle from the tool bench. I was hoping for neutral party offering free coffee. He moved quickly to the perimeter and peered through a cracked lens mounted on a tripod. Sure enough, a single Varelli Scout drone hovered low, skimming over debris and twisted metal, like it was looking for a reason to feel smug. Its outer casing gleamed black-blue, sleek and predatory, with a central red eye that blinked every few seconds, like it was winking at him in condescension. Elias flipped the safety off. "Want me to take it out?" "No," Avil replied, still behind him. "Let it see me." He blinked. "That's the exact opposite of stealth." "It is bait." "Well, at least you're honest about it." She walked calmly into view, standing just outside the hangar doors, regal even in scavenged boots. The drone locked onto her instantly, paused, then hovered away with sudden urgency, no doubt already uploading images to someone very far away, who now had a very sudden and very nervous meeting to call. "They'll know you're alive," Elias said, "probably within the hour." "Good. They will accelerate their plans. Less time for them means less time for traps. You really do play galactic-scale chess, don't you?" "I once negotiated a ceasefire during a three-way battle while reciting orbital law in 6 dialects. That's either hot or terrifying." "Both, I've been told." They returned to the ship. The full diver had decided to be less sulky and now displayed a hopeful, initializing message. The warp core thrummed with low, menacing optimism. Elias climbed into the cockpit, which smelled faintly of burnt circuits and something vaguely lemon-scented that probably came from Kelso's cleaning attempts. Avil took the co-pilot seat, immediately adjusting half the settings he'd just configured. "So," he said, flipping switches at random until one of them beeped the right way, "what's our escape plan, Your Highness?" She didn't react to the title, but her voice was tighter than before. "We fly into low orbit, avoid Varelli patrols, and then punch a micro-slipstream window toward the Kashari belt. There's a listening station there, old, abandoned, but with enough tech to signal my fleet. And your fleet will come running the moment they hear your voice?" She hesitated. "They will come. Whether or not they are glad to see me remains to be seen." Elias glanced sideways. "That's some royal drama I should know about?" "I left them," she said. "They told me to run. I refused. I stayed behind, alone, to stop something that couldn't be stopped." He was quiet a long moment. Then, "Well, at least you're consistent. Still trying to stop impossible things with bad odds and worse company?" She turned to him. Her eyes met his. "You are not bad company. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me during this war. And I once got a compliment from a psychic slug." The ship trembled slightly. The reactor whined. The nav screen blinked again, this time displaying ready, with a hesitant green glow. Elias exhaled. "Well, no turning back. Would you, if you could?" He looked out the viewport, saw the smoke on the horizon, the flickers of firelight from the advancing enemy, the barely functional outpost that still held a few dozen frightened people doing their best not to scream. "No," he said, "but I'd definitely pretend to for a few minutes, just to feel something other than impending doom." She nodded. "You are very strange. And you're very royal. Let us hope those qualities are complementary." Elias punched the ignition. The full diver groaned, shook, then lifted shakily into the air, wobbling like a nervous goat before stabilizing. Avil reached for the stabilizers and made several adjustments that immediately made the goat metaphor feel insulting. Outside, klaxons began to blare. The Varelli assault had begun. Plasma fire lit up the hills, and far above, a glint in the sky, orbital ships dropping silently toward the planet like hungry stars. "Guess the drone report went through," Elias muttered. "They're not here for conquest," Avil said. "They're here for me. Let's give them the galaxy's worst game of hide-and-seek." The full diver roared. Its slipstream core engaged with a shriek like tearing metal in an unexpected blast of lavender light. The ship surged forward, and with a flicker of distorted air and probability, vanished from the battlefield. Behind them, in the ruins of Outpost 17, Juliet the drone hovered silently. "To be or not to be," it said very softly. "That is the question." The full diver held together, though Elias would have bet against it in any civilized betting ring, assuming such rings existed anymore and hadn't been atomized in one war or another. The ship wobbled as it slipped through microspace, gliding between probability curves and worming around pockets of resistance, like a cat evading responsibility. The nav array blinked with disapproval every few seconds, and the guidance system offered helpful advice such as, "Please consult a licensed quantum navigator," and "You are now technically both alive and not." Avell sat composed in the co-pilot seat, hands steady on the auxiliary panel, guiding the vessel with eerie calm. Outside, the fold's protective sheath flickered, catching slivers of starlight and the distant shimmer of Varelli patrol waves scanning the sector. "How far to the Kishari belt?" Elias asked, not entirely confident his voice wouldn't trigger an engine fire. "0.3 standard cycles," Abel replied, "give or take gravitational interference and localized existential collapse." "Cool," Elias said. "Always wanted to die next to an abandoned satellite tower." "You won't die," she said. "Probably." They arrived exactly 11 seconds later than Avell had predicted, which Elias insisted on marking in the ship's log as proof that royalty can be wrong. The Kishari belt appeared like a dream frayed at the edges, once a hub of interstellar communication, now a graveyard of silence. Crumbling antenna arrays drifted between asteroid clusters. Old relay buoys blinked softly, muttering ghost data into the void. And there, nestled within a cluster of rocks shaped suspiciously like a fried snack, stood the signal station. It took them 3 hours to get the thing running. It had been built before either of them had been born, when engineers still believed in buttons the size of fists and screens you had to punch to activate. Elias did most of the punching. Avell did most of the glaring. "You'd think a galaxy-spanning empire would spring for voice-activated tech," Elias muttered as he climbed out from under a panel. They did. It malfunctioned. One queen was ejected into space for sneezing. "Remind me to never upgrade." At last the comm burst to life. Avell leaned forward, speaking her native language with clipped, precise syllables. Her voice vibrated with authority, even though it had been weeks since she'd worn anything resembling a crown. She finished the message, transmitted it across subspace, and sat back. "Now we wait." Elias nodded, then offered her the emergency snack bar he'd been saving for a special occasion. She took it, studied it, then said, "This contains no nutritional value. Neither does hope, but here we are." They slept in shifts. Hours passed. At one point, Elias taught her how to play a version of human chess that involved holographic kittens and laser beams. She lost spectacularly and accused the kittens of bias. The mood softened, like metal bent just shy of breaking. By the next cycle, a reply came, coded, layered in diplomatic encryption, and signed with a name Elias had never heard, but Avell recognized instantly. She read it 3 times. When she looked up, her face was unreadable. "They're coming," she said. "Good news? They're bringing an armada." "So, good news?" "It depends whether they plan to rescue me or arrest me." "Oh, right. Family reunions. Always awkward." 3 hours later, the Valeri fleet emerged from warp in a display of engineering so dramatic it made the fold diver beep in envy. The lead ship, a massive, sleek beast of polished obsidian and starlight, locked onto their location and hailed them. Avell stood, straightened, smoothed her tattered outfit. She looked less like a fugitive now and more like a monarch on a very bad vacation. "They'll want me to explain everything," she said. "Why I stayed. Why I trusted a human. Why I gave up the throne to fight beside mortals." "Sounds like a hell of a story," Elias replied. "You want me to go with you?" She looked at him for a long time. "Yes," she said. "I do." They boarded the Valari cruiser. The interior was sleek and bright, a study in terrifying efficiency. Soldiers in ceremonial armor lined the halls, eyes watching every breath Elias took. A few looked at Avell with something like awe, others with concern. All stood aside when she passed. They brought her before the council, 5 beings each elder than most civilizations, seated in a crescent of silence. Elias stood at her side, resisting the urge to wave. Avell spoke first. Clearly, fully. She told them of the battle, of the fold diver, of Elias. She did not spare herself from blame or praise, and when she finished, there was a silence that felt longer than the war itself. At last, the eldest counselor leaned forward. "You abandoned your post," the being said. "You broke protocol. You exposed your genetic signature to a primitive species. Evel met their gaze. I did. Why? She didn't answer immediately. Then she turned to Elias. Because the galaxy doesn't need more rulers, she said. It needs people willing to carry someone they don't understand through a battlefield and ask nothing in return. People who patch broken ships and teach chess with kittens. Who face impossible odds not because they are chosen, but because they choose. The council was silent again. Then slowly the eldest nodded. So be it, they said. They offered her the throne again. She declined. Instead, she asked to serve, on the edge of space, where peace was fragile and trust rarer than oxygen. She asked Elias if he'd join her. He said yes. Years passed. The fold diver was repaired, upgraded, and renamed the Reluctant Crown. It became infamous across 5 sectors for showing up where it wasn't supposed to, solving disputes that weren't its problem, and leaving behind trail mixes and smug holographic messages. Elias learned to understand Valari dialects. Avel learned to enjoy sarcasm. Neither of them ever quite figured out the coffee machine. Sometimes when the stars were quiet, they would sit in the cockpit and watch distant worlds pass like slow-moving thoughts. And when someone asked who they were, Avel would smile and say, "Once I was a queen." Elias would add, "And I was just the guy who carried her." And then they jumped to the next world, where something else probably needed fixing, or saving, or breaking in just the right way.